Another Dooley Noted podcast comes to you from the Coach's Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill in Celebration Point. Okay, and welcome into another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. Going to have a great show for you today. Paul Finebaum is going to join us. Always love talking to Paul. We'll talk all things SEC. Always got as a controversial takes. We'll play yes, no, way, or maybe with him, brought to you by Big Mills Cheesesteak. And then, of course, Coach Spurrier back on Monday. We always love Coach Spurrier in here, brought to you by Meldon Law. And then Thursday, Grant Holloway is going to join us. Well, actually, he already did. We've already taped the interview because he had of his schedule. But it's a great interview. He's a great interview. And man, somebody got thrown under the bus really bad. You need to watch that. You need to watch or listen to that show. So excited about all these great guests that we've been having. We've really knocked it out of the park on guests. A lot of fun. It's more fun when you get people that are not only interesting people to talk to, but just good people and fun to get their opinions. And it doesn't have to be my opinion, right? I'm not always right. In fact, I've been told by my wife I'm almost never right. So let's try to be right about the rest of the show. We'll start it with the Process Service of Gainesville, starting five. Appreciate our friend Scott Hart over there at Process Service of Gainesville. They do a great job. All right, first of all, number one, yes, I am leading with basketball today, guys. That game last night, I didn't see it coming. I did not see it coming because I knew that Florida hadn't played that good on the road. You know what happened when they went to Tennessee. You know what happened when they went to Ole Miss. They played Kentucky right to the wire here. So you know they're not, the talent level is not that disparaging. No, not that separate. Whatever word I'm trying to use there. It'll come to me in a moment. Anyway, so I just didn't see it coming. So I'm covering the game for Gators Wire, and so as I'm sitting there and I'm writing everything down, I'm like, that it gets to be 41-31. I'm like, this could get ugly right here. Now, Gators had put a little, I think it was an important surge at the end of the half, cut it to 6. Come back in the second half, started off great, take the lead. I'm like, all right, you have my attention now, Florida. And then to win the game the way they did, obviously the big shot we'll get to in a minute, but, Zion pulling. This is why I'm as proud of this team as I think I have ever been about any team, not counting the national champs, okay? Certainly the 14 team with Pat Young and those guys that won 18 straight games, I'm very proud of them. You can be proud of a lot of people, but they're in that realm of being in the top 5 of teams I'm most proud of. And you guys know my 2 favorite things in the world are Florida winning and Kentucky losing in basketball. Those are my 2 favorite things in the world. So it was a pretty good night. I'm in a pretty good mood. I will tell you that. It had been since 2003 that they'd won up there when they were a top 10 team. Now that's because obviously they won them all in 14, but their last win over a top 10 team was 2003. It'd been a while, but it's hard to be top 10 teams, especially on the road. It happens, but it's very difficult to do. Anyway, I'm just proud of these guys. Zion pulling 41 minutes, 2 turnovers. He brought that team together. He has got such a laid-back demeanor on the court, but they listen when he talks and they do what he tells them to do, and they get it done. And they're so much better when he's playing. And he almost played the whole game last night. Reed Shepard from Kentucky played all 45 minutes. A lot of guys retired at the end of that game. But I wanted to mention him, and I certainly wanted to mention Tyrese Samuel and the grown man rebounds he got late in that game. That guy sweats like a shack, and he had to be tired playing all those minutes and banging around with those guys. And he was, it was tough because Oyenoso had 8 blocks and some of them were on him. But still, at the end of that game, to go up and get what I call them grown man rebounds. Just go up there. Nobody's getting hired me, and I am snatching this thing down, and you better not even try to take it. It's my ball. I love me some Tyree Samuel. I love a lot of these guys right now. I did want to mention Zion Pullen, 41 minutes, 2 turnovers, 7 assists, 7 rebounds. Florida barely won the rebounding battle. It was a tight game, obviously, which will bring us to number 2 on our process service of Gainesville starting 5, which was Walter Clayton Jr.'s shot. And here it is right here. I've watched this 50 times. Let me watch it again. Boom, fake, Shepard. Oh, in your face, little boy. And here's the thing I love about this play is that he had the calm to do the pump fake. And when Shepard, if you watch him as he goes by, he still gets a hand up, at least in the periphery of Clayton, and still nothing but net. Well, he might have caught a little rim. Anyway, I love watching that play. I can watch it over and over again, and the magnitude of it. Now, where do you rank it? You know, look, the number 1 play of all time for Florida, the number 1 shot, I guess I would say, to me, is still Mike Miller's shot because what it led to. The Mike Miller shot led to playing for the national championship. And I hadn't seen anything. I mean, this was my first real experience. I'd been to some March Madness games, but this was the first real time I said, I'm in March Madness. Now I know what it feels like. That was 2000. Then Chiozza would put second. Chiozza's shot, because it did get them to the Elite Eight. Unfortunately, if they had won that game, it would rank maybe right there with Miller. I would put Chiozza next. And then Chandler Parsons, the half-court shot against NC State. Because don't forget, they barely got in the tournament that year. If he didn't make that and makes a 3 to beat South Carolina after Devin Downey runs the length of the court to make a basket. Anyway, you're getting my point. But I think this shot can be a top 5 or 6 of all time. I may do another list for Gators Wire. I need to call them up and see if they want a 12 best shots in Florida history, biggest shots. Now, a lot of it, guys, you know this, depends on how they do the rest of the way. Because if they don't go to the tournament, we'll remember that shot as, that was kind of fun. That team that they were talking about from 98, Billy Donovan, when he had Jason Williams and Eddie Shannon, they lit up Kentucky, and we were all so happy. That team didn't go to the tournament, though. So it does make a difference anyway. But where you rank it depends on what you feel like. I mean, I would definitely put him behind Parsons, Miller, and Chiozza right now. However, that shot may get them in the tournament. If it does, it goes up a notch. All right, let's get to number 3, which is I got a new saying for you. You know how I love my sayings. This is a new one for you. Don't let one win become one win. Because they have a game against Texas A&M on Saturday. This can be a tired team. Don't forget, flew back in the middle of the night after an overtime game where a lot of guys played a lot of minutes, got back in the middle of the night, probably 3 a.m, whatever it was. And this is, I mean, not knowing that if they had any problems with travel or anything. You get up today, you kind of have an off day, you get back on a plane Friday, tomorrow, and fly out to College Station and play a game there in the afternoon. I mean, it's going to be tough, but when I say don't let one win become one win, this team's won 4 in a row. But don't think this is it. You've accomplished what you were trying to accomplish. It was important to get a quad 1 win. Winning in Lexington is always going to be my favorite moment of the season. I love it when they win in Lexington. Nothing makes me happier. But don't let one win become one win. Stay at that. You're right now, Florida's got a 36 in the net. So they went up 5 or 6 spots. They're playing A&M. A&M's 46, so it will count as a quad 1 win if they can win this game. And then Auburn, 8 is 8. That's a sellout now. Auburn is 8th in the net. So these are 2 more opportunities to get quad 1 wins. That's my point. Don't let one win become one win. Win another one. Go win another one. Win one of these 2. You win one of these 2, you're probably in really good shape. But there's a lot of games to go. We have a long way to go. We've only played 8 games in what is it, an 18-game season. So long way to go. Let's get to number 4 on our process service of Gainesville starting 5. And I did watch this game as well because there was a moment earlier this season when I was like, Florida was losing, I think, to Tennessee or somebody. And Mike White's team was playing really well. And I'm like, man, why did they have to drive that guy out of town? I like the guy. We got along good. Why did they have to drive him out of town? He brought in good players and good guys. And then they blew that game. They blew that game. They blew another game. And then also last night, they blew a 16-point lead in the second half. So maybe Mike White is in a good place. But that game was incredible to watch Alabama come back and win that game. Missouri, by the way, goes to 0-8. I don't know how they're going to get a win in the SEC because they last night they scored 56 points in the second half and lost. I feel bad for them. The guy's a good coach, and he had a great team last year and got to the tournament and everything, but it's not working out. All right, finally, number 5 on process service of Gainesville starting 5. News just breaking as I was getting ready to do the show that made me very happy. And that is the Washington Commanders have hired a coach, and his name is Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn, I consider us friendly. I don't know about friends because we rarely see each other, but we text all the time. I text him congratulations and stuff. Did today. But Dan Quinn is a good dude, and I hope he does well there. I think he's got a chance to have a great situation. I think I'm right on this. I think they have the second pick in the draft, and they have the most cap space of anybody. So hey, he can go in there and make things happen, man. And now, like, I was never a fan of the Washington other team or the Commanders just because I wasn't. I was when Spurrier was there, and then once he left, I really got to where I didn't like him because I started hearing stories from him. But now I got to be a fan of theirs again. That's fine. I don't have a problem. This is what I talk about with the NFL. There's 32 teams. I rank them on a 1 to 32 scale every year on how much I like about and how much I don't like them. Cowboys are going to stay down there at the bottom, but now the Commanders are going to leak into that top part. So we'll see how that goes for me. Hey, look, I'm weird. What do you want from me? I'm a weirdo. It's all I got. It's what I got to do. And what I have to do is the process service of Gainesville starting 5, and it is now completed. And I appreciate Scott Hart. We will take a break. When we come back, the great legend, the mouth of the South, Paul Finebaum will join us. We appreciate him for doing that. We'll be back with more of another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios.
Great food, great atmosphere, a diverse menu, everything made from scratch, plenty of space, and locally owned. These are all the characteristics of a great restaurant, and you can find each and every one of them right here in Gainesville at Ballyhoo Grill. Ballyhoo Grill prepares all of their food fresh every day, from their salad dressing to their award-winning soups. Bring your family and enjoy dinner under the Tim Trebo Tiki Hut while listening to live music. Or if you're running low on time to eat out, they also deliver through Uber Eats, Bite Squad, and Postmates. A Gainesville staple that's been open for over 30 years. Check out Ballyhoo Grill on Facebook or at ballyhoogrill.com.
Things have certainly got a little out of hand lately when it comes to just buying our everyday necessities. Just look at gas, streaming services, and heck, even chicken wings. Well, there is one necessity that shouldn't cost a ton: taking care of yourself and helping fix all the aches and pains in life, and the fine folks at Titan MRI agree. With costs a fraction of what you'd pay at a hospital, you'll not only save money, you'll be taken care of by staff with over 20 years experience. So when you need an MRI, call Titan first, and you can go where your doctors send their families. Now offering CAT scans.
Process Service of Gainesville offers a rapid turnaround on affidavits of service for Gator lawyers locally and nationwide. Our friend Scott Hart offers immediate responses on status requests and is a member of NAPS and FATS. And he has been a part of the community for almost 2 decades. Need service? Call Process Service of Gainesville at 407-697-9592 or email shartgators, that's G8TR, at yahoo.com. And make sure you ask about the paralegal legal secretary
bonus program.
Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. It's a great pleasure to bring on my friend Paul Finebaum. And Paul, of course, you guys all know him from the SEC Network and all the other stuff he does on ESPN as well. I don't know what's going on, Paul. Both of our alma maters are in trouble. How do we do that? We didn't do anything wrong.
Well, it's I don't know, you probably haven't picked up on this, but we live in a different world. I remember in the old days, Pat, you could get a free T-shirt. You'd go on probation for a year. Now they can give you the university, and it's not enough to get you in trouble.
Yeah. So if they just kept it to $8 million, it probably would have been okay. But when they get up to 13, now all of a sudden, in fact, Florida just today parted ways with their NIL guy. So Marcus Walker, Kester Walker, who's a good guy. I met him a couple times. Good guy, but that tells you that maybe he's being the scapegoat for this. But I mean, I know I listen to your show all the time, and that is so much of the talk, and everybody thinks they have the answers. I wrote something just recently for Gators Wire, the 12 things I do to fix college football. And after every one, I went, that's not going to make it in court, though. But that's going to get struck down, though. It's hard to figure out what to do.
Well, Pat, number one, in most places, I realize Gainesville may be the outlier here, but there's genuine excitement for college football. People still watch. People go to the games. And fans just don't care. They've caught up. They can say to you, "Hey, Pat, man, I like it better the way it used to be." But we're still watching the games. The players have their hand out, and they're entitled to have their hand out. And the universities don't know what to do, but they keep getting it done. And all the administrators and the leaders who say we need help, well, I mean, all they're trying to do is curtail it.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing about, mentioned Florida. Florida has had, obviously, 3 straight losing seasons, 2 of them under Billy Napier. They sold out 9 games last year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people are showing up. People will come, Ray. And I think there's a post-COVID bump here, and we'll see if it's sustainable. I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, I talked to a number of people in the entertainment world, and people want to go to events. It doesn't matter whether it's Taylor Swift or the Doobie Brothers, final farewell tour or a Gator game, and that's what's happening right now. And I am so sick and tired of everyone saying we have to get this person or we have to get Congress to help. None of this is going to work. The system is going to get blown up in due time, and I'm comfortable with waiting. I think we're about to have the most exciting transition ever in college football, especially in the SEC, with 2 new schools coming in, a 12-team playoff. Everything is different. Count me in on it. I don't care what anybody says.
Do you see the day that we're going to get to the super conference of like 60 teams or 64 teams?
Yeah, I think we're heading toward that. But right now, I mean, we've gone from the Power 5 to the Power whatever we are, really, Pat, to the Power 2, because outside of the Big Ten and the SEC, let's be honest, nobody really matters. I mean, these 2 leagues have all the money, all the power, all the television deals, and if you're the Big 12 and especially the ACC, do you remember when the ACC was a basketball conference? I mean, I don't know what it is right now. It's a disaster.
Yeah, they win a lot of those kind of lacrosse and
yeah, good for them.
Rugby and things like that, cheerleading. But it's just so crazy right now. But at the same time, people are still coming, and yeah, the portal's wacky and everything, but you can't put an end. And in fact, the DOJ getting involved in this last thing. The bottom line to me, and I don't know how you feel about this, Paul, is the NCAA screwed all this up in the beginning. They could have put a lid on all this stuff, but instead they just fought it in every way. And then when they had to finally acquiesce, they had no control over it anymore. And I mean, I know Charlie Baker talks a good game, but I don't know what he's going to get done.
He's another empty suit. He's just a fancier empty suit. I mean, the last guy, he dug in so deep that the game it's like, remember in the 90s, you had all these computer companies were going, we're going to stay with the mainframe. We're going to stay with the tabletop desktop. And then all of a sudden everything blew up. And by the way, it's hard to see change as quickly as this has happened, but it has happened now. And, I don't care. I mean, I'm of that generation as you are. The way it used to be doesn't matter. Let's not forget the biggest explosion we've seen in recent years was Nick Saban 2.5 years ago, or maybe under 2 years ago, going scorched earth. He wasn't upset that Jimbo Fisher had the #1 class. He was upset that his school had not given enough money and they were #2. And he was talking to boosters that day in Alabama saying, we can't let that happen again. That everyone missed the meaning of that because Jimbo Fisher came out the next day and made such a fool out of himself.
Well, he did that many times, as you know. But that's the thing about with the he went scorched earth on this. Everybody's talking about we have different rules in different states. Somebody called the other day and said, "Hey, I hear they're getting ready to give money to NIL money to high school players." I go, "Oh, they've been doing that for years." I mean, DJ Lagway was, all those guys at Missouri, they're getting money in high school, and then you try to come up with an idea to cap it. But if you cap it, that's going to the courts, and that's not you're restricting the earnings of a person. So I don't know what the answer is. I think eventually they just got to make them employees and live with it like that.
Yeah, I think we're close to it. I mean, there's just a lot of growing pains in the middle, but that's okay. I mean, that's why these athletic departments make so much money and have so many people that walk around looking busy.
Yeah, in their polos, they got their nice polos on. What do you do? I'm in charge of 3rd down and 1.
That's about it.
That's right. I got to ask you about this time of year for you, because I know that, basketball still is a big deal, but it isn't football. And we know that there's almost a lull from the time that football ends to when it begins again. But there's been so much news coming out, so much, Jim Harbaugh leaving the conference, I know, or leaving the college football, and I think as a college football fan, good is what I would say. But and obviously Alabama getting a new coach, so there's been plenty to talk about, especially out there or out in Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, where I think from what I've listened to on your show, Alabama fans are embracing this, but they're still not sure if they should be embracing it.
Yeah, what's so remarkable, it'll be a month ago today, I was sitting in Pasadena, and what has changed since then is remarkable. I felt like the offseason finally began at the end of last week with the Harbaugh news. And as far as Alabama fans, Pat, they don't know what to do. They've lost the greatest coach. We know that. And they're trying to embrace Kalen DeBoer. And I don't have any idea. But the problem with Alabama, and you've lived it post-Spurrier, post-Urban, is what is good enough. And at Alabama and Florida, at least it used to be at Florida, the standard was a championship. And I think that's the same. We would have obsessions and week-long shows on our network when Nick Saban did not win the national championship. That was a big deal. And now, if Alabama gets in the playoffs next year, I think that would probably be considered good because they're not the best team anymore. They've lost so much talent recently. And, their fans are in the same mode as they always are. We're Alabama. That means what? I don't know. It doesn't mean anything outside Alabama.
Yeah, and then, obviously Nick lost that. When Nick left, you lost that Saban discount, too, on NIL. And so it'll be interesting to follow this. And, Kalen DeBoer seems like a great guy. I think he's a great coach. But do I think this is going to be a massive success? I have no idea. Do I think it's going to be a massive failure? It might. I have no idea. I've seen it go both ways there, as it has gone both ways here in Gainesville, as you know.
Yeah, I think if what's the over and under on how long he stays there? I know a lot of people that don't think it's that long. I don't know yet because I don't know what this team is going to look like. But yeah, if you're Greg Byrne and you went by I'm going to get a lot of pats on the back at the next convention, he won. But had the two of us been hiring, we probably would have looked a little more seriously at. We probably would have done what we could to get Sarkisian or Lanning or maybe Norvell, maybe Lane. But he didn't go. I don't know what route he went because these guys never speak truthfully, as you know. And one thing he never said though, he never said he was the first choice. He said I had A, B, C, and D, which tells me that he was down to probably third or fourth.
Why do you think Lane Kiffin? Nobody wants to touch him, and he's in a good place. If you win 11 games, they're going to build a statue to you, which he did last year. But you would think that with Alabama and Florida and teams like that, Tennessee, somebody would have taken a flyer on that guy and said, hey, it's working everywhere he's been going. And maybe he's straightened out.
Lane lost the job the day he was fired from Alabama, remember, after he already quit to go to Florida Atlantic. There's a lot of rumors about what he did. Clearly he was not prepared for the semifinal game against Washington, ironically. Right. They still won the game. They would have won the national championship had Saban not let him go. I would have, Saban probably should have held on to him another week, and he was leaving anyway. Giving him the riot act. But he really ticked off people that day. I think the tweets this year about is Kevin still in charge really irritated Saban. And I think Lane is still a very viable candidate. I just think Alabama was not going to happen. But I think Lane, Pat, don't take your eyes off of Lane because he was not interviewed for Alabama.
Yeah, no. I think he's a great coach. There's no doubt.
He turned Auburn down, I think, with the idea of getting Alabama. But he's got his eyes on a couple other places.
Yep, that'd be cool. Other thing I wanted to ask you, and then we'll play yes, no, where, maybe with you. But is it concerning to you? We see another coach leaving college to go to the NFL, and I know that a lot of these guys who just don't want to deal with this NIL, don't want to deal with the portal, don't want to deal with all the roster management. In addition to all the glad handing you have to do, they want to get to the NFL, and all you got to do is coach football. It's kind of why Billy Donovan left Florida in basketball. Is that concerning to you?
No, I think the Boston College situation is the wrong one to use. I talked to that Jeff about 2 years ago at the NFL draft. I didn't think he was going to make it to the next season. He flat out off the air just accused a couple of people in the ACC of flat out cheating, shattering the rules. And he said, I can't deal with this. He was also in trouble. He made a wise decision. Let me get out before I get fired. Boston College is not prepared. And again, that's another ACC story. It's like, Pat, if we wanted to be truthful here, which we probably don't too much, there's a couple SEC schools that are seriously challenged.
Yes, no doubt about that. All right. Of course, Paul's coming to you on the Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. Let us play yes, no way, or maybe with him. 3 questions, and we will get his answers. It's brought to you by Big Mills Cheesesteak, street dining done the right way. Sponsors of the Bob Dooley Invitational, I might add. And great people over there. If you go in there and say you listened or watched the podcast with Paul Finebaum, you get free fries with the order. How about that?
Yeah, I'm pretty happy listening to that.
All right, number 1, the SEC gets 4 teams in the new playoff next year.
I would say no. I think 3 was probably the number I would. I think there's going to be 2 or 3 on the bubble, but I would go with 3, Pat.
That was a question somebody asked on the radio the other day. So now that Georgia's the clear number 1, right, in this conference, who's number 2? And I don't know the answer to that.
I think it is Texas. They really have a lot coming back. How are they going to integrate into the new setup? I think pretty well. I think it's Georgia, Texas, and then you have Missouri, Ole Miss, Alabama.
Yeah.
There's
LSU. I don't know.
Yeah, LSU. Absolutely. There's 4 schools next, and I don't think I think somebody's going to. We're going to have a cannibalization.
All right. Number 2. You have thought about having a steel cage match between some of your callers at some point.
The answer is no. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if a few of them had a steel cage match and we just all decided to leave them for the weekend. But I don't want you know me well enough. I'm not going to just give you a line here, but I care more about the callers than I do anything else, Pat. They are what has made this show. And just a quick story: when I got the job 11 years ago, I did my first interview, and I said, I can't wait to talk to Tammy and Phyllis. And Mike Slive called me, and he was furious. He said, "How could you do that?" I'm like, "Mike, what do you mean?" He said, "I mean, the whole idea is, the SEC." I said, "That's great, Mike." I said, "But I got this job because of the fans." And that's the most important thing that people forget sometimes is that, yeah, it was Alabama fans and still is. Alabama's been fairly important the last 10 years. But this is a conference network that has all these other shows, but the only show that really is entirely devoted to the fans is ours.
Yeah. No, and I think you've done a great job. I wondered about the transition, and I wondered they're kind of putting all their eggs in the Paul Finebaum basket, and it's gone just tremendously.
Pat, I can assure you, I can say it now. The people at ESPN had no idea what they were getting. They just thought, "Oh, good show, great. We'll stick it in there." And after the first show, there were people in the building that I currently work who I know for a fact say to each other, "It will never work. This guy doesn't understand TV. He doesn't look at a camera. He acts like he's on the radio." That's the whole idea of the show. I look at the camera a little bit more now, but it's still a radio show that is simulcast. That looks a lot better than all the other shows now, because all the other shows are on Zoom. We're in a state-of-the-art studio. But beyond that, I still try to keep it as real as we can, even though as you know, there's always the suits are always interfering.
Exactly. All right, and finally, number 3, and you alluded to this a little bit ago. Number 3 on yes, no, where maybe Texas wins the SEC in its first year.
I would say no. I really believe it will be Georgia, and I still can't get over Georgia not winning it last year. It's just, one day Kirby Smart is going to look back and go, "How in the world did I lose that game?" Bad call at the end of the first half and a fumble in the fourth quarter is the reason why. But he probably had the best team in the country. I would have loved to have seen Georgia and Michigan. We won't see that game.
Yeah, and our big fear in Gainesville, I think, was a Georgia FSU national title game, and then neither one made the playoff. And I thought for sure they were going to meet up. Of course,
this is the wrong forum for me to say this, but everybody said, "Oh, I know you were excited that Alabama made the playoffs." That was not the reason I was excited. I was excited because FSU did not make the playoffs. That is, of all the things I've dealt with, I've dealt with a lot of hypocrisy in my career, as you have. But some of the biggest load of garbage, it wasn't even the FSU fans. I always support the fans, but it was the media. This false narrative that they deserved to be in by people that didn't believe a word of it.
No, they were going by numbers instead of what was going on.
Norvell made a good. It wasn't Norvell. I like Norvell. I think he's a really good coach. But it was the administrators at FSU who have just done about as good a job of screwing up their fate in athletics as any group I've ever seen. The ACC people and mainly all these these do-gooders in the media.
We know there are none of those around.
There are. I have names.
Paul, as always, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule and joining us. Make sure you say hi to Laura for me. I haven't seen her in a long time, but make sure you say hi to her.
I know that the teenagers have Taylor Swift, but our group has Laura, and she is very special. And mostly, I appreciate you not asking me about Billy Napier, because I think he is the greatest coach on the face of the earth.
There you go. Yeah, we'll get into that next time.
All right. Why ruin a good day?
Thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. We'll be back with more of another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome studios right after this break. Hello there, everybody. I'm Pat Dooley, of course, from another Dooley Noted podcast. And this is a great Adam Brewer, and he's just opened up a place here, Adam Brewer To Go. What gave you the idea to do this, to have a to-go place like this?
We really like the fast concept, being able to get the barbecue. Now we have this new online ordering. So before it was a call ahead carry out, quick service. We have like a curbside kind of a deal. where everything's ready to go for you. And then we thought, wow, we have a really great dine-in concept, but how can we make this streamlined for the customer and make it easy and accessible for all parts of town?
Adam's Rib Co. to go. Come on down and enjoy it.
I was driving behind a lady, and very suddenly she moved out of the way. There was a log laying in the road, and when I hit my brakes, I went on top of the log. I had 280 discs. I just haven't been the same since. Jeffrey Meldon fought for me all the way. Him and his team really went there for me. Throughout the whole lawsuit, he made sure that my bills was paid. It was never no whenever I called him and asked him for something.
Call Meldon Law right now.
Another duly noted podcast comes to you from the Coaches Podcast Room at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill and Celebration Point. You can watch and listen to us on Facebook and YouTube for every podcast that we do on Mondays and Fridays at 2 o'clock. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, any of the other 39 platforms where you can find this podcast or your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments section below or call me if you want to do some advertising at 352-317-3444. Okay, and welcome back to another Dooley Noted podcast presented by Titan MRI from the Meldon Law Dooley Dome Gator Studios. Appreciate Paul Finebaum for coming to us on the Big Mills Cheesesteak Zoom line. And I don't want to get, to be honest with you, I didn't want to get into what he thinks about what Billy Napier is doing. And there's enough people who have strong opinions that we hear on the radio every day. Okay, we'll just see how he does this year. And then look, this year is everything for him. I'm sorry. I thought I was going to be a 4-year guy. I'm not. I am. You got to show me something this year. Anyway, that's not what we're here to do right now. We'll talk about that later. Maybe we'll talk about it Monday with Coach Spurrier. All right, let us get to our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. As you know, Hesser and Kipke is a Gainesville law firm specializing in the areas of workers' compensation and family law. Ken and Jennifer take great pride in their one-to-one focus on each and every client they represent. Ken is board certified in workers' compensation law by the Florida Bar, while Jennifer possesses extensive jury trial experience with a nearly 20-year background as a prosecutor. Don't believe me? Well, check out their 5-star Google reviews, set an appointment at hklawfl.com, or better yet, give them a call at 352-339-9920, Hesser and Kipke. We appreciate them very much. Let's start with number 1 on the 3 things today. And Paul did kind of mention it a little bit, but I did want to bring it up. Jeff Hafley leaves Boston College, where he was a head coach, and he was in trouble last year. I think he was coaching for his job and did a surprisingly good job. But when you get a chance to go to the NFL and be a coordinator, he's going to be the DC at Green Bay. You get a chance like that financially, everything about it. You don't have to deal with NIL anymore. You don't have to deal with portal. Yeah, you have to deal with free agency, but somebody else is dealing with that, not you. You're not the one who has to deal with it as a defensive coordinator. Heck, the coach doesn't even have to deal with it. It's the personnel guys. And you've got no chance of being ultra successful at Boston College. You're going to win some games, get to some bowl games, because you can't raise that kind of money for football there at Chestnut Hill. So I get it. But now I know that he wanted to go back to the NFL and everything, but there is a groundswell of coaches wanting to go, and it worries me a little bit. But here's the bottom line. As long as college football is paying big salaries, they'll still have coaches. They may not have the better coaches, but they'll still have coaches, right? That's the story I'm hearing. All right. Number 2 on Hesser and Kipke's 3 things. Every week when I'm doing these the swamp games of the weekend, I'm always going, man, ranked teams never play each other. What? I'm looking for, hey, let's get a good game, kind of offbeat, but it'll be 2 ranked teams. No, there's none. This week is different, man. And this is a Saturday. I know that you've probably been telling your significant other, hey, this is the week I'll clean the gutters. This is the week I'll do this. This is the week I'll do that. Not Saturday, man. Sunday, I mean, you'll have Pebble Beach to watch. But Saturday, the basketball is pretty incredible. You have 4 top 10 matchups, which has never happened before. I find that hard to believe, but there's 4 top 10 matchups that has never happened before. We'll give those to you on the Swamp Games of the weekend, but that's what you need to be watching this weekend. That's what I'm going to belly up to, including the Florida game, of course. That's not one of those, but who knows if Florida, it's funny, if Florida beats Texas A&M, they'll be ranked. Okay. If they just to win over Kentucky, and if they lose to A&M, I don't think they'll get in, but if they do, I don't want them to get in. I don't want them to get ranked. I just want them to get in the tournament. That's all I care about. And that's kind of the fallacy of the poll. Okay. So number 3 on our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. We've been talking, especially on the radio, we have a lot about baseball. Is only a couple weeks away, but I think it's important to note that by this time tomorrow, next week, there'll be a softball game. Florida is starting next Friday down in Tampa. First home game is February 14th on Valentine's Day. I am excited about this team. I'm excited about what it's going to do. Now, if you saw the coaches poll, picked them 7th in the SEC. I can't think they've ever been picked that low before, but they've got some really good players, and if their freshmen come through, I think they'll be fine. It's going to be an interesting season. I think they open with Alabama, I think, is their opening SEC series too. So anyway, I just wanted to give a shout out to softball. We're thinking of them, and we'll be out there watching a bunch of their games. Of course, baseball starts a week later, and we'll be out there for a lot of that as well. Those are our Hesser and Kipke 3 things. Let's get to our Leonardo's at Millhopper quick picks. I'm making you work this week. A lot of you picked Florida and took the 7 points, and obviously you won. I always wonder what they do if it's a game goes to overtime. Isn't that the score of the game, the final score of the game, or do you if you took a team plus 7 and they got beat by 8 in overtime or double overtime, I don't know, it shouldn't count as a loss. I don't know how they work it out there in Vegas. Anyway, the Leo's quick pick. I'm making you pick 2 games, guys. No spreads. Just simple, write them down. Duke, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. Duke and North Carolina, Tennessee and Kentucky. Those games are in North Carolina and Kentucky, in Lexington. Not far from each other, actually. So Duke at North Carolina, Tennessee at Kentucky. Those are your Leonardo's and Millhopper quick picks. Leonardo's, yet again, another major sponsor of the Bob Dooley Invitation. Let's get to another major sponsor of the Bob Dooley, and that is Adam's Ribco to Go. We'll pick our Gator of the week. Who could it be? Let me think. Well, here's the deal. I could have made it any one of 3 guys for what happened last night, but I got to go with Clayton Jr. I mean, come on, man. That 3 was huge, and then the 3 he made in overtime with like 1:30 or so to go that put them in the lead. They're down 2. He makes that 3, and then, got a little dicey there at the very end, but at one point they had a 7-point lead. So Walter Clayton Jr. with his 23 points, those 2 threes, though, were the difference in the game. And every time he lets it go, I think it might go in because it goes in a lot. It's like some guys shooting, you go, that's going to rattle out. He and Will Richard, when they let it go, I think it's going in. But anyway, Walter Clayton Jr., you are the Adams Ribco to Go Gator of the week. It's quite an honor, believe me. Let's get to our Swamp Restaurant games of the weekend. I'm pretty sure my daughter watched the game there last night, the Florida-Kentucky game there last night. She gave me a call from there. And, of course, you go to the Swamp. This is a good Saturday to go if you want to watch a lot of great basketball games. And you can have the Gator game on as well. You can watch some golf. I know last year we went there one day when it was, I think it was Gator baseball and the U.S. Open. I think that's what it was, yeah. So we get to watch them both, and it was great. Great place to go. So let's give you those games of the weekend. Also go there, get sangria Saturdays, get BOGOs for beer. There's all kinds of specials they have. the Swamp Restaurant. Great place to go. All right, we'll start out with this. Houston at Kansas. That's at 4 o'clock on ESPN. That's 4 versus 8. Florida and Texas A&M play at 4 o'clock as well, so you need the 2 TV setup. You want to watch both those games. That game's on ESPN 2. Duke and North Carolina play on ESPN at 6:30, and then Tennessee, Kentucky is 8:30 on ESPN as well. So ESPN is going to load up on these games. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't write down the other. There's another game between 2 top 10 teams. Just so you know. Can't remember what it was. But anyway, it's going to be a wild weekend. Have fun watching basketball. Or if you want to get outside, I've been thinking about, I need to play golf again. I haven't played forever. Maybe I will. All right. That is your Swamp Games of the weekend. Let's get to this, that, and the other, which is brought to you by Ironwood Golf Course, home of the Bob Dooley Invitational, by Dar Shakow Insurance, and by Ballyhoo, where we were last night for dinner, and they've got a new cool one of those tablet menus, which I think a lot of people are starting to go to that. And it was really fun. The food looked great on there. And of course, it was great to eat too, because they're the best. And we appreciate Bill Reichert and those good folks over at Ballyhoo. We appreciate all of our great sponsors. This is that after signing day, Florida's 15th in the rankings for signing, and people were gnashing their teeth. Everybody was mad. And again, I get it. A lot of people dropped out at the last minute, and that caused you much concern. And I totally understand. But I always say, don't worry too much about the rankings, but I do understand your concern. So that is that, well, some people redid theirs, and when all these transfers came in and everything like that. And if there's one of them, I can't remember who it was, had Florida 6 in the country if you did it by player, which is how I think you should do it anyway. Like, you could sign 35 4-stars and no 5-stars and get a higher ranking than a team that had 20 4-stars and 5 5-stars, something like that. You know what I'm saying? They tend to reward mass over quality. Anyway, the point being, ESPN came out with new rankings. They had Florida 6. I think it was ESPN, somebody else, but ESPN did do re-rankings, and now they got Florida 10. And here's what the other is. I don't care, and don't worry about it. Florida's got a really good class they brought in. There are good players in that class, and I hope they turn out to be as good as what I've seen on tape and what I'm talking to people about them. This is a really good class that they brought in. Doesn't matter if it's 10, 9, 7, 12, whatever. Wherever it's ranked, it's a good class. You add in the portal guys. They've got, like I've said, they have the best roster they've had in a long time. Maybe since Mullen's second year. Maybe even before that. Anyway, that's this, that, and the other, brought to you by Ballyhoo and by Dar Shakow Insurance. Let's wrap it up with Pat Dooley's Storytime. As always, Pat Dooley's Storytime is brought to you by Eastlake Pediatrics. Doing a great job down there, Michael Jordan and the folks. I'm going to tell you 2 stories since it's Super Bowl time, and I may tell you another one on Monday. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. I don't know how much they are myth or legend. I think one of them is dead accurate. One of them is maybe a little bit of an urban legend, but I'm going to tell them to you anyway because I love the stories. One of them involves Shelby Struther. And if you don't know who Shelby Struther is, he used to be the columnist down at Florida Today, and then he was at St. Pete Times, one of the best writers. I think Shelby, we talked about Martin Fennelly the other day, and Bernie Linscomb did more to influence my writing style than any 3 people. They really did. But Shelby was at the Super Bowl when I was in New Orleans, and he's looking around, he sees all this decadence going on around him, which definitely happens. And he goes, I got to find something that's not the Super Bowl, and people that don't care about it. And he went to a leper colony and wrote a column about it. I've talked to him about it. You'll sit there, and when he's telling you the stories about it, and you're laughing so hard, and like beer is coming out of your nose, you can't help it. That's one story. The other story is, I think it's true. but I don't know who it was. It might have been Woody Page. It might have been some other sports writer. But as the story goes, covers the Super Bowl. Of course, this is a long time ago, so it might have been Edwin Pope. Covers the game. They were day games back then in the late 60s and early 70s. And so takes his, not a laptop, he had a typewriter and all his notes, and goes back to the hotel. The hotel was just right across the street, like it usually is for a Super Bowl, and goes up there and gets on the after he's done all his interviews and everything, and he gets in the elevator, and he's getting ready to go up, and this young lady of the night walks in there, and believe me, I have seen them at Super Bowls before. And she walks in, and she goes to the writer. She goes, "Hey, is there anything I can do for you?" And he goes, "Can you write a column and a sidebar?" Boom. Mic drop. Love it. And if she could have, he'd have given her $100. I promise you that. Oh man. Anyway, those are two of my favorite stories from the Super Bowl. All right, we'll tell some more stories on Monday when Coach Spurrier will be here. Don't forget Grant Holloway on the following Thursday. Really hope you enjoyed Paul Finebaum today. Zach, I enjoyed you as always. You did a great job. We will be back with more of another Dooley Noted podcast on Monday. Till then, I'm Pat Dooley. I am deep. I'm way back, and I am out of here.